when you've got a black hole, it's infinitely deep. And so when you go in, apparently there's like entire universes in there just like this one. So how do we know that we're not inside someone's CERN Hadron Collider? Is there a higher order than truth? And so many of us are disenfranchised from truth. Our politics, everything, there's no truth. And the further we are from truth, the further we are from our own spirit.
The crossing isn't from one planet to another. The crossing is from a collective state of consciousness choosing over and over again to refine the timeline to the best success chance of making the crossing.
Is your health, is your purpose. And your purpose is your health, and they're one for one and completely interchangeable, and there's no difference between the two. Human beings transcend judging each other.
So in today's interview, I'm so grateful to have Amrit Sandhu, who I had the great pleasure of meeting on his show, Inspired Evolution, and we got along so well. And I thought, my audience, you got to meet this guy. A big heart, a great laugh, and also on top of that, quite the journey from an engineer background to being a podcast host of one of the most inspiring, spiritually oriented shows on the internet. So welcome so much, Amrit.
Oh my God, Laurie. It is such an honor and such a pleasure to be here. I hold your work in such high esteem and regard to be here with you and your audience. I mean, yeah, I'm humbled. I'm a little bit like, oh my God, hopefully this will be good. Hopefully I can live up to the expectations of being on Laurie's show. But yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you.
You're welcome. You know, one of the things that really fascinated about you when I was on your show, and also then since then I've watched more of your episodes, and before that I'd watched episodes as well, is your own evolutionary journey. We talked a bit about it last time, you know, how you came into this livelihood, and what I even understand from something you said, that you were really like the last podcast person standing in a course you took to become a podcaster, and that of all your cohort in some learning curve, you were the last guy who actually made it work. So how is it that this sort of engineering background, share with us that, and you end up so involved in the spiritual community and the esoterica of reality?
Yeah, great. So, few layers to that. Great question. Thank you so much. Spirituality, I mean, I'm Indian by heritage, and just between you and I, and everybody listening, my dream podcast guest remains my father. My father's actually my dream guest. And I dreamed to get him on the podcast one day. When I asked him, like, you know, would you be on the podcast? And he's like, to what end and what purpose? And I'm like, because, you know, there's a bunch of wisdom, and he's, I believe, he's a mystic and an incredible sage unto himself, basically. He was this father that had no trepidations asking a 4-year-old Amrit going, why are you here? I'm like, well, because we live here. This is our home, Dad. And he's like, no. Why are you here? And he had no qualms about sort of busting the metaphysical bubble for a little 4-year-old and going, wait, what? So I grew up with, you know, this sort of grooming, conditioning, just having these sort of deep metaphysical conversations around with my father, touch wood. And being Indian, my mum also very devout, very religious. We're all, karma is something we just, you know, oh, why did that happen to such and such? Oh, must be their karma. You know, like, it's just, so I like to say I never really stood a chance, you know. I was always going to be spiritual in that regard.
But you buried the lead. Why, what did you tell your dad?
Winding back, I mean, it was always, what did I say to Dad when he said that? I was always nonplussed by it, but he would then sort of encourage me to sort of go, okay, you know, there are different types of people, there are different layers to reality, there are different, he would start to educate me based on my inability to respond to him. So I don't think I had a qualified response as to what I actually had for him. If I wind back correctly, maybe I did have an attempt at it. It was quite a while ago. I barely remember being for, but I remember the pointed questions consistently and coming up like sort of drawing blanks. But then also, I think it was less about me having a response. It was more about me having questions. It was more about me having questions. By faith, he's a Sikh. By faith, I identify as a Sikh, and the term Sikh literally means learn. And I found that really handy, talking about engineer that you mentioned as well, because I mean, the vibe of a Sikh is just perpetual student. I mean, the podcast, if you look in on it, it's just my school for me, and everybody else is learning along by my side, right? I get to ask the questions that I want, and it's just my own school, really. But I'm having my own education through there. So, and I found that really handy because as an engineer, you're always asking questions. What is cutting edge science? What are you learning? What's new? And then, applying that. An engineer's role is to take what science has come up with and basically bring that to the world so that we can actually make it practical. And so it's interesting. I sort of see myself as this spiritual engineer now. It's like, there's all this, teachers such as yourself uncovering incredible astrological insights. You've been dedicated this for your lifetime, right? And then also trying to make that practical for everybody else, in the world. So you're the science of astrology, and I get to be the engineer and bringing it, through the podcast for everybody else. But for me, engineering was, I mean, I'm Virgo. In my Western astrology, I'm Virgo. Like in both, actually, I'm Virgo. But in Western, I'm Taurus rising. It worked kind of well to be an engineer for the period that I was an engineer, but it wasn't my calling. Way back when I look at when I started to shift, I was very clear that I wasn't clear at the time, but for the longest while, I could look back and say, now I look back and conveniently can say, I wasn't living in alignment to my values. Yeah, but now, then I've been a coach for the better part of a decade now, helping people live in alignment to their purpose. And for the last little while now, it's really like I found values, not that they were cute to make them sound like, but it's just so much richer to look at one's astrology, I have found. So then you can start looking at your astrological chart. Oh, this is where I was out of alignment to, my natal makeup. And so that existential crisis of 15 years of engineering and not living in alignment to just what felt aligned for me. I often find myself just qualifying this like it's an incredible role in engineering that I was doing. It was paying very handsomely. It was really, really good. It just wasn't Amrit's makeup. And I think I went through that specifically because, so that I can support others, being Virgo, a big thing for us is service. I went through that specifically so that I could earn my stripes. So when I share this message with you, it's like, hey, alignment's important. I'm not just sort of like bandying it around, it's like actually cellular for me, it cuts deep. And it's like, actually, I remember what it was like when I was waking up at 4 a.m. to get ready to go to work on a construction site. Had to be there at 5:30 for a 6 a.m. start for everybody else, coming home at 10 p.m., starting that, doing it again, doing 70, 75-hour weeks. Yeah, I like to joke, and it's not really that funny, but I just say I had my midlife crisis. And it was actually my Saturn return, but I had my midlife crisis before the age of like 30, 32, because I just front loaded all the hours that people put into like the 9 to 5 that they normally do up until the age of 40, 50. But that was the birthplace of the inspired evolution, because I could easily see that my corporate ladder, the people that I was looking up to, they weren't embodying the values at the time that I could see, that I deeply respected and want to be nurtured and watered by. And so then I could see teachers such as yourself, like all these incredible guests that we've had over the podcast over the years. And I didn't know much, but I knew like perpetual student vibes, that I was ready to study and learn from these great teachers, and I couldn't see myself. I didn't want to become a caricature of the people that were in the corporate hierarchy that I was a part of, right? There was very few inspirational. And so I saw inspirational teachers such as yourself, and I was like, I'm inspired and I'm ready to evolve. And that was the birthplace of the Inspired Evolution podcast. And it's just been 2 episodes a week for the last little while. It started off as 1 episode a week, and we've just been consistent for, in 2 weeks, it'll be 9 years. Yeah.
Well, you got me very curious then when you talked about your first 32 years and crunching for, where you are now, because was it at the age of 32? Because you're an astrologer like I am. You also look at the sky to be the mirror of transitions in life, right? Where we shift from one thing to the other. So when did you leave behind? Because 32 is a Dharma age. It's one of the Dharma houses in the Hellenistic tradition. So it's the 9th house age. And I've noticed that a lot of people, myself included, have shifted entire professional direction towards something that as you would say, that's inspired and more true and authentic to the character, while they're going through these ages of what we call like the Dharma houses 1, 5, and 9. So 9 is 32. And so I was wondering, is that when you made the transition?
Yeah, no. So it wasn't when I made the transition. So I made the transition a couple of times, and and I think this is important to communicate because yeah, it was my Saturn's return. Yeah, that really like I was going through, and my wife and I are born in the same year, so it was kind of handy because we go through transitions at the same time. But it's also kind of like well, because we go through transitions at the same time. So she had her existential crisis, and she dealt with it the way she did. She was like, I need to go on a sabbatical to find myself, and so she left, and so I was, and that was, and now I look back and I was like, that absolutely started in the middle of our Saturn's return. We were like 28, 29, and it was that was the seminal year. But to your point, I was doing the podcast for a couple of years, and the first time I disconnected, yes, was like 32, and I ventured out on my own to sort of see, hey, maybe I could just be this podcaster guy because I got so fed up with engineering. It was just like it wasn't the existential cat was being rubbed the wrong way, basically, and I did quit. But then 6 months later, I realized I'm not actually. It was actually my wife who had a really deep, meaningful conversation, which was like, "Hey, I don't think this is working. Like, you want to have kids?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I do." And she's like, "You're supporting yourself, but you don't make enough to support a family." And I was like, "Yeah, I don't." And so then I had to tuck my tail between my legs and walk my way back into engineering for a while. And so I did this a few times, and then then finally it sort of clicked. So, yeah, I do think the transitions give us this opportunity to sort of capitalize on them and walk forward into them. But sometimes, they can, I'll not sound like this, but blow steam up our bums, right? And we can sort of be like, oh, I'm really capable of this, Like I notice sometimes when Jupiter's in Leo at the moment. If you're looking at the Western, but not in the, yeah, and I just feel like, oh, like I can just sense it. I want to buy stuff, and it's like I just stop, you don't need to do that, yeah, like just ease up.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah, I know that the planets are funny that way for, a Leo from your Virgo position. Planets don't necessarily create what happens, right? I think that they're more like, they're mirroring or indicators of what is trying to happen. And every planetary body will take us in a range of motion between the shadow and the darkest expression of that planet, all the way through to the highest possible expression of that planet. So like Saturn can bring depression, frustration, fear, anxiety, melancholy, nostalgia, and can also be form, structure, discipline, perseverance, and the ability to stick with it. In fact,
dedication.
You did say
dedication.
I remember you talking about that with Lee Harris recently, and how, there was this desire. You guys were talking about the power of our will to persevere in order to achieve something true and meaningful. And, that really did captivate me, because the real question I have, I'm going to ask you what you think, when we do have that marathon type of perseverance or sustainable willpower for something we wish to accomplish, I kind of notice that only seems to happen when I'm in alignment with my truest purpose.
100%.
But I don't get that willpower otherwise. How about you?
Yeah, 100%. So it's interesting because what you just described is the first part of your question for anyone listening in. If you rewind back for a sec, Laurie's talking about where like the creation mode of like, hey, like willpower to actually go ahead and do something, right? So we're going ahead, we're doing something, like we're actually creating. But to the last part of your question, actually willpower just shows up very differently when you're in alignment. So just to sort of preach for a second, pardon me for this, but my framework's called Metaflow. Yeah, it's about Metaflow. And like flow states, we've studied them. Stephen Kotler, who's been on the podcast, as has Jamie Wheel, these people that have pioneered, and they go and teach Navy SEALs like flow states, corporate institutions. Everybody's trying to harness flow states. And they work with the neurochemicals in your mind to sort of basically be able to wind down, like hack dopamine, hack norepinephrine, and so on and so forth, to bring you into flow states so that you can actually just perform better, they found. And I remember reading Stephen Kotler's book, Stealing Fire, on flow states, and at the very end he sort of says this thing which is like, flow is so addictive that once you get a taste of it, you will start to engineer your life around it. And I read it and I sort of dismissed it really quickly. I was like, my skeptic in me was very much like, nah. this is too much Kool-Aid in that line, and I sort of just let it go. But then there was a few moments, like I'm in flow right now with you. For me, it happens in conversation, and it's conscious conversation that it happens for me, right? So it shows up in conversation. It shows up when I'm speaking on stage because it is a conversation with an audience. It shows up in one-to-one, deep, intimate, my coaching work. It shows up in astrology readings because, again, it's in conscious conversation, deep and intimate. My thing around Metaflow is not that flow. Like, yes, that flow is like a lead indicator of where you are in alignment. I don't dismiss that at all. I think it's fundamentally important, but I think that's a symptom. Yeah, that flow. Metaflow is like when your life is, well, between an astrologer to astrologer, when you're living a life in alignment to your chart. Yeah, there are things that happen when you're lined up. I sort of see it like a camera, an aperture, like the light just pours through very clearly and obstacles get removed out of your way. Like, I don't know what powers show up. Maybe it's God, maybe it's universe, maybe it's the creator, or maybe there aren't any obstacles when you're in alignment. Yeah. But to your point, with Metaflow, the framework is align, believe, create. Align, believe, create. And so back to what you were saying before, is that the willpower to create what you want to create, it's so much more effortless when you're aligned. And it's like, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Because when you're in alignment, there's so much flow. Oftentimes, the only thing that inhibits us once you are aligned is that our belief in ourself, which is like, oh, then I don't really believe that I'm the person for this. It's like, I'm aligned. It's like, I know this is my chart, and or these are my values, and this is my deepest fascination, just between you and I and everybody else listening, is the inner knowing. That knowing, where does it come from?
Absolutely.
What has it got?
Absolutely. And that is such a beautiful way of saying it. Because I think when we even like the word belief sometimes trips people up because we can have all kinds of beliefs that are later seen to be false, right? We hold it for a while and then we recognize its fragility and we let it go. Whereas faith, which can be inner knowing, faith is inner knowing, is a whole different archetype. And what I notice when you talk about this alignment with our true chart or our true essence of who we are, your why are you here, as your dad said, once we begin to actually earnestly look for that answer that you were always asked as a little kid, we start to get synchronistic clues that tell us that what that answer is. And if we pay attention, right? I think if we look for the clues, the breadcrumbs, I used to call it kisses from God, the little synchronistic moments that tell you keep going this way. It's like, if you're trying to get an animal to follow you and you're dropping breadcrumbs, right? Like, you know what I mean? This way, this way. And I feel like that flow state that you're calling metaflow and the pieces of that, not only do we get signs and synchronicities and all of that, but we experience an intrinsic joy. Like even when there's an obstacle, the joy is already there. Like there's a bump in the road, right? But it's not like a joy. It's not a joy catastrophe. There's causeless joy. This joy is just because things are moving purposefully, directionally, the way they're meant to go. Does that something you've experienced?
Yes, the word I would actually like, yes, the joy is a part of it. The word I would like to use, if that's okay, is vitality.
Oh God, that's even better.
There's touch it, thank you. There's a vitality about it, yeah? Because sometimes like doing the work you're showing up for, because joy is a much deeper orientation than happiness, 100%. Joy and happiness are not the same thing. Happiness is very fleeting, and most of when you look around at society, it's wired for happiness. So just there's a whole trip there we can talk about. But the joy, but even then deeper than that, I find a deeper orientation is fulfillment. Yeah, and this just happened with my journey, and we can unpack that further if you want. But I noticed that, and lots of Leos have this actually. But if you're out of alignment, yeah, you're feeling suppressed because you're not able to express your true authentic self. And with that, there's a suppression, which is a 1-for-1 with a depression. And so that starts to you start to atrophy your being, your physical, your emotions, your mental, your spiritual. But if you're able to be in alignment and then start to slowly express, like there's so many of my coaching clients which are burning out. The corporate C-suite burning out. And I'm like, yeah, here's a little side project for you to go do. It looks like pickleball or it looks like pottery. And they're like, I've already got so much on my plate. I don't want more to do. And you go give them that extra thing to do. And all of a sudden, because it's deeply in alignment, they're like, oh, I can breathe again. Because there's an avenue where they can express, yeah? So vitality is what you experience when you're in Metaflow. That's the whole name of the game. And I thought I was this trippy guy because the message in my heart is your health is your purpose. And your purpose is your health. And they're 1-for-1 and completely interchangeable. And there's no difference between the two. And I just thought that was a trippy message that Amrit had etched in on the inside of his heart. But it turns out the whole science of Ayurveda exists to facilitate your Dharma. It's like it's an ancient message. Yeah. So the whole
Yeah.
science of health is here so that you are here for a reason. What are you here to do? And let's potentiate your health to make sure you're there. But if you're not living in alignment to the thing you're here to do, then your health also starts to atrophy, because nature has this conversation with you going, well, you're not using the carbon cells and the molecules and all the things to do the things that I put you here to do. Please return them to me so I can put them to use in another avatar, in another creation, so that they will honor the being in this existence to the way that it's required to be communicated, expressed. And so vitality is the name of the game underneath all of
I
that.
love that. I don't think I've ever heard someone quite say it that way, actually. Thank you for that. That is beautifully
Touch wood.
said. I mean, because, vitality, the expression of that, like energy, is really solar energy, really. It's the life force energy. And it's funny you should, bring up the Leo principle as well. Because, in astrological perspective, is the ascendant, is the character. It is the simulation avatar. It is the persona. You could say it's the spacesuit or something, but what inhabits that, or what brings that to life, what is the animating force of reality, is our spiritual essence, which is more connected than anything in our chart to the sun. And I really noticed that there's a huge trend going on lately where people are, for some reason, it used to be when I would look at clients in their readings, in their charts for years and years, it would often be the second Saturn opposition window of time around the mid 40s, when people began to sort of recognize, and it's after the Uranus opposition, which is its own midlife crisis, but they would begin to recognize something to do with the whole theme of flow, satisfaction, vitality, and an existential underpinning of that mid 40s is the simple thing, what the hell am I doing here? Like, if I'm not enjoying the ride, why am I on it? And then when that question starts to percolate at the unconscious level of anyone in their mid 40s, because you're in your second Saturn opposition, which takes you back to your being 14 and 15, FYI, the first Saturn opposition, they start to leave behind the mask. They start to drop the persona. They start to, like barnacles that got all stuck on a ship at sea, they start to scrape them off and find out what was there all along, what was deeply ready to be shining in the world, but had just gotten covered over with expectations, false beliefs, family indoctrinations and stuff like that. But now I'm noticing, for some reason, which is going to lead me to my second question for you, that people are starting to activate this more vital solar force, knowing heart energy at earlier ages. So then my thought to ask you is that you see so many people over the years on your show, and you begun to collect sort of an osmosis data set. Do you have any kind of sort of, now that you've got so many interviews under your belt, any kind of trend lines that you're seeing for what the world is going through now in terms of people navigating back to who they are and experiencing that metaflow? Do you understand anything about what most people are saying in that spiritualogical ecosystem of yours?
It seems like we are living through a great transition. Every person I speak to, whether they're an astrologer, whether they're a Vedic astrologer, whether they're Hellenistic, whether they're a spiritual teacher that's deeply connected to energies on the other side of the veil, all the different teachers that come on the podcast, it clearly seems that this is a very I look at ecosystems. Pardon me, I'm double Earth, but I look at ecosystems, yeah, and it's like you've got a farm, and then you've got like the tree lines, yeah, and it's always at the edge. It's always at the edge of ecosystems that the most interesting stuff is happening, and there's a lot of creativity, there's a lot of life, there's a lot of interesting things happening, but it is very chaotic. Right, there is order to it because it's Mother Nature, but it is very chaotic. And it seems like at this time we are living through, everyone I speak to, there is some shape or form of agreement of like, this is the great transition. And when I say the great transition, it makes it sound like this will be the greatest transition ever in ever history, forward, going back. And it's like, no, this is just the greatest transition that we've known. And I think sometimes we do forget that because we are the tip of the spear of consciousness and awareness at this moment in time. Yeah, like for many teachers, time is just a construct, and they're like, the future exists and the past exists and it's all happening now. It's like, okay, all well and good, but there is this thing where right now, through all of my history and all of my ancestors' history, All of that, the tip of the spear has landed me in this moment, sitting opposite Laurie and you listening to us. There's something about this moment. It is the tip of the spear for your consciousness, even if consciousness is having this relationship with reality in a very linear way, yeah, so that humans can have ultimately an experience. Yeah, there's a whole thing there, but we're having this experience, and so we are living through this incredible time of transition. You speak to some of the teachers, and they're like, there have never been this many humans on Earth because they wanted to witness this transition that the Earth itself was going through. So the Earth is transitioning, we're transitioning. It's an incredible time. Do I think that people then therefore come through with exceptional gifts and exceptional awarenesses at times like this? I mean, how could you not? How could you not? Because it's the edge of an ecosystem, right? There's all sorts of funky stuff happening. It's not a homogenous time. It's not a settled time. It's not business as usual, you know? Yeah, everybody's coming through, and lots of people have very different ideologies, and true to, I mean, some of the age that, you know, in Western astrology, they're moving into the age of Aquarius. I mean, we're all going to be unique in our way, and celebrating our uniqueness is the way forward in many ways as well, to help us stabilize, which is really trippy because, you know, Piscean eras are all about schools of fish. It's like, how do we all look like each other and get along? When you watch schools of fish, the school actually ends up looking like one big fish as well as they're moving through the water, maybe without the tail, but they actually look, so they all become like this symbol of themselves. It's a lot of uniformity and conformity, yeah, but we're moving through this phase where it's not. So do people come through with different awarenesses, different consciousness? I think by design, by necessity, to facilitate the change that's happening at this time. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. But you know, the whole concept that I've held for years when we're talking about, I call this the crossing because of a poem that I channeled during the pandemic, and it was like, what was this thing? So this poem really like was a channel poetry, and it was telling me the very same thing. The threshold is here. We're at the crossing. Humanity is making an evolutionary leap as a collective into a new form of consciousness, and we'll probably still have bodies, but embedded within that is our new understanding, our more fresher understanding of the multiverse and the timeline shifts that we're all capable of experiencing continuously, so that when we have events when we have what's the word I want, memories, but like the Mandela effect, when we have, let's say we remember something that is not true, but we're so sure it's true, but it's not true. To me, every time that happens, I've simply crossed into another timeline where I still have a vague like echo of the past, the way it used to be. And I've got like so many friends who have experienced kind of these shifts of clear timeline jumps, let's call it, that it's startling. I mean, I've had my own too that have been startling. One of my favorite stories, I think you'll get a kick out of this one, is my friend in New York City went away to Peru and had a mystical experience in Peru at Machu Picchu, and got back to her Manhattan apartment, a brownstone, Upper East Side, and she's lived there for like 30 years, and she literally walks in front of her building, Amrit, and there are 2 trees there. Now, they're not little saplings, they're huge, and she's like, what the hell? Like, did they like plant these things when I was gone for 3 weeks? And then she goes into her building and she gets up to her walk up, a 4-floor walk up, and her neighbor's coming by with the giant dog and the leash. And she's, oh my God, you got a dog? And she's thinking it must be a rescue. It's not a puppy. And her neighbor goes, what are you talking about? I've had this dog for years. And then she gets into her apartment, because this is the most startling story I've ever heard. And she's not a crazy woman. And I've had other friends with ones like it. And there's a key set, a bowl of keys in her apartment. And as she settles in that evening, she sees a key and she picks it up and goes like, what is this key for? And her sister comes to visit a week later and she says, do you know what this key in my bowl's for? And she goes, yeah, it's Dad's apartment in the Catskills. Oh, house. Dad's cottage in the Catskills, our family cottage. And she goes, we sold that 5 years ago. And her sister said, we never sold that.
Yeah.
Now, this is a totally rational, high-functioning editor in Manhattan. How can you account for that? And I've got so many of my own and other client stories, but I like hers because it's audacious, right? It's just an audacious timeline jump. So, I mean, in that sense, when you talk about the spearhead in this time and place for something that's evolving for humanity. Well, that spearhead keeps jumping together. We say, oh, we were going to skip, we're going to skip that timeline. Like I think you were talking about that with Elizabeth April. We're going to skip that timeline where, you know, that nuclear bomb happened, right? And there was actually a third world war with nuclear radiation. We could sort of vaguely wonder, like in the Mandela Effect, it seemed to me that there was a nuclear bomb explosion, but then people tell you you're crazy because that's not the timeline you're in at this time.
Yeah, when you speak to someone like Dr. David Campbell, yeah, Tom Campbell, sorry, he talks about in the quantum how there's the whole thing is sitting on top of possibilities and potentialities, right? And what I see from my like, and this is what I see is that this particular moment in time, we've called it the threshold, we've called it, the Great Transition. We can sort of see that the burgeoning human population is extracting more resources from the earth than it's pretty clear we need, like, I think it was Dr. Bruce Lipton that came on the podcast and said we need like 1.8 Earths to sustain Earth every year that we need right now. We don't have that. Like, we just don't. Yeah, so what are we going to do about it? And so it seems like there is this overconsumption, but like we are living through this period where previously there was like these cataclysmic floods, right? There was a flood, where the Bible talks about it, many different Gnostic cultures talk about it. The Hindu system has this great flood that happened, and there was like a reset. It's really trippy when you stop to think about the fact that we may be living through one of these times right now. Most teachers say we are, so I use may just because some people will want that sort of qualifier. Living through a time like that right now, touch wood, and yet we are aware of the fact that we are doing this right now. Because previously, conscious may not be so self-aware that it's like, oh, and I'm doing this to myself, and I'm not sure if I will sustain or make it through this. And so I think, and I've noticed this to your point, with memory, like everybody listening in, like just at the time of this recording, it happens to be a Wednesday. Yeah? Now, for me, it's probably a Tuesday for Laurie. That's already trippy in itself, but anyway. But going back, I can't tell you what I had for lunch on Friday. And I'm double earthed, and that really bothers me because I'm meant to be super grounded. Yeah? So I'm like, yo, like, wow. And I feel like but I clearly remember a decade ago, I could tell you what I had for lunch. And you could argue that I'm getting older. I think I'm getting smarter, touch wood, touch wood. But nonetheless, I feel like our relationship with our awareness is shifting significantly. Everybody I speak to has a very different relationship with memory now. Some people will potentially argue that it's these things that is corrupting it. I'm holding up my phone for those that are listening in on audio. But yeah, like maybe not. But it seems like even if that is the case, by design, our relationship with memory as just one faculty of all the different systems that the human being occupies in their mind and their awareness that helps them navigate is shifting. And you can see how that's loosening, right? To your point about the tip of the spear, and maybe talking about Tom Campbell's potentialities and possibilities, that's what's required to loosen the thread so that we can actually, I don't want to sound like this, but survive through this great transition, right? Because otherwise, maybe some of the same old leads us to cataclysms of, many of the teachers say this will be a cataclysm of fire if it goes ahead. And when we look at all the nuclear buttons that are at the reach of people around the world, which I find it weird that, we wouldn't be friends with many of these politicians and yet we put them in power, but that's a whole nother conversation for another podcast. But yeah, right? Like we're trying to avert this, and consciousness itself is giving, I believe, humanity the best shot that it can, and hence why some of this stuff does loosen so that we can actually step into places where it's like, actually, we might just make it. Now, it gets really inspiring when you speak to, because back to the osmosis of like some of the teachers, many of the leading future, like visionary prediction, like what do you call them? I call them channelers, but forecasters, intuitives, said there was a period there in the middle of the podcast a couple of years ago where they were like, I can't look. Like, I've been told not to look anymore into the future, because when I look, it's like it could be anything. And in many instances it was dark, but when I was looking at it, it was dark. And it's like, now when you're speaking to me, I was like, I only see the light. I think we've crossed something where we actually do make it through. So it's inspiring to hear, but it also does seem like that our mind, our relationship with mind and our faculties is up for grabs to help ensure, I think, our survival.
That's really an interesting thought. I kind of notice, and I think this could be tied into the whole way consciousness is shifting itself. You could say it's because the CERN collider was shut down, but I don't know if that's what it is. But I'm also noticing not just the relationship to memory is changing and prioritizing memory in a different way. Maybe do we really need to remember what we had for lunch 3 days ago? And so memory and time are entwined because the memory is of something that is called the past. But our relationship to time is changing. And I've noticed something new lately, and I'm hearing other people speak about it. And I've heard other people tell me they think this relationship to time is coming from the CERN Hadron Collider shutting down for 4 years. And as soon as it shut down, everyone had a new experience of time. I don't know. That's a new thing trending. But I noticed it before I saw it on YouTube or Instagram, all the rage, And that was where I would get up in the morning and think, okay, I'm getting up at 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. and I've got so much to do today. And all of a sudden it would be 4 p.m. and I'd be like, how did that happen? Time went so quickly.
It blipped.
But it's slow, for me, it's slowing down.
Same.
Now I'll get up at 6 and it'll be 10 and it'll be, oh my God, it's so slow. And then it'll be 1 and I'm like, I can't believe I still have a whole day left. This has been true since, for me, about 2 to 3 weeks. We're recording on August the 11th, 2026. I appreciate time feeling as if it's slowing down because it's spacious. It's not racing by in
Western,
a heartbeat.
I'm Taurus rising, so me too.
Like, let's go slow.
Slow and steady, easy does it. Like it's
I know, but then I keep asking my friends and people I meet and clients, how are you experiencing time lately? Fast or slow? And people are more are saying slow than fast,
which is tricky because when you look at the astrology, like Uranus moving out of Taurus into Gemini, right? Like you would expect it to speed up a little bit as well, and then you start to see some of these things, and it's like it does. But to your point, yeah. 100%. I felt the same experience, and it's hard to articulate for people that it's like, hey, like what, like this happening over here in Switzerland is like having and it's like, yeah, but do we really know what we're doing over here? I think you mentioned that on the podcast as well. It's like it's an incredible experiment that we're doing. We're firing like literally on the other side of here's a trippy thought that I think you might enjoy, but every time they fire these protons and these electrons, is like this, the atom, which is meant to be the most indivisible thing, because that's by definition in the Greek etymology of the word, at each other around basically an oval, which is the Hadron Collider, at each other to sort of, and it's really difficult to get them to collide, as an engineer, it's really difficult, like the probabilities of that, it's like, but they manage to do it, and then when they do collide, they smash each other apart, and then they come up with like the Higgs boson and the God particle, and it's like, oh my God, we're getting even more atomy, like we're even getting even more indestructible pieces. But do we actually know what the consequences of doing something like that are on large when you're drawing this much energy into something? And it's like, and I find it really trippy because I've got a statue of Nataraj on my altar, touchwood, and they've got that at the thing at CERN, and I'm like, what, like like the vibration.
Right, yeah. The big Shiva.
Do they really know, or do they not know? Like what? It's really, really trippy, and so watching that. What you will find, and CERN says this, it's like what ends up happening is there are little micro black holes that open up in this. And I, talk about having a father that asks really trippy questions from the outset. Like this was one of the things that it's been a very long time that I've sat with this since I first heard about the Hadron Collider, but I do triply wonder if, and I don't think this is actually happening, but nonetheless, there is, talking about whatever, like the nature of reality. A black hole, when you study it, which by the way is my symbol for Scorpio, just another conversation for another day. But when you've got a black hole, it's infinitely deep. It's infinite. There's like an infinite amount of, it's infinite in the black hole. And so when you go in, apparently there's like entire universes in there just like this one. So how do we know that we're not inside someone's CERN Hadron Collider? I know it's super trippy, part of me for this, but living out in this experience, and like, yeah, we don't know, right? But it is a trippy thought experiment nonetheless that I like to sort of, engage with.
Well, I have another thought experiment that I'm actually on a spaceship in suspended animation, and this is one big simulation to get me through the trip.
I'm curious to know where you're going. I'm
going to the Great Attractor to see what it is. Oh my God.
Maybe your Rahu or your Ketu will tell us where you've come from.
Probably.
And where you're headed.
I've got that South Node in Aquarius, so it just like leads me to sci-fi every time. Yeah, well, the whole fun part about this is these are great thought experiments, but the phenomenal world and our perception of reality and collective apparent recognized shifts like the Mandela Effect. Like, if you don't know, guys, listening to the Mandela Effect, that's kind of like we all remembered that Nelson Mandela died or he didn't die. And there's different memories for that. Or in the Bible, the lion lays down with the lamb or with the wolf. I remember the lamb in my Bible school, or the Berenstain or Berenstain bears, and those are children's books.
Even Nestle logos having shifted out and tripped out. Like, some people see the Nestle logo as one thing. Fruit of the Loom is like another label, that looked one way.
Or the cornucopia, yeah.
All these different things people identify, like I think it was Costco. I think some people see it as like one way or the other. There's a few of these like very clearly documented. Like, there is 50% of the population that's like, I swear it was this, and the other 50%, I swear it was this. It's really trippy. It's really, really trippy the more you start to look into this stuff.
Right. And when you start to experience it as well, like, in other words, it's one thing to read about it, but then when it's your memory of a certain brand or a product or a world event, and then you clearly know it to be true, like 100%, this is what happened. And then you talk to people, and other people have the same memory as you, and other people don't. I remember when I was my ex-husband and I had a thing for exploring the esoteric and the Mandela Effect at one point, and he's so funny, a very pragmatic Capricorn, so not even super woo. And we both had the same memory of the song by a Queen, "We Are the Champions." And he loved that song, but we both remembered it really clearly as "We are the champions of the world," And there was a weird time in the Mandela community where people noticed, this is about a decade ago, that the suddenly "of the world" refrain was missing. Now I thought, it can't be missing. So I went on and watched every Queen performance, every stage performance, the record, listened to the record on Spotify or whatever. Anyway, long story short, there was no more "We are the champions of the world." It was just "We are the champions, my friend. We are the champions, champion." No "of the world" refrain. About 8 months to a year after it seemed to be missing in any data that you would find online, right? But other people said, no, it was never there. And people like me said it was there. It returned. And now it was there again. So what I mean is that, what is that mutability about reality, that it is not fixed? Like, it's not stubbornly fixed. It keeps like dancing around and changing. And I don't think people have false memory syndrome. I think people are having shifts from timelines to timelines, and jumping along what I hope is the spearhead of the superior timeline that we're all trying to gather. The crossing isn't from one planet to another. The crossing is from a collective state of consciousness choosing over and over again to refine the timeline to the best success chance of making the crossing.
Survival.
Right? You know what I mean?
Survival.
Survival.
Yeah, survival. I think that's the impetus underneath it, because we are living through a very interesting time, and there is a self-awareness of the potentiality of destruction. Yeah, I don't want to sound like that, but I think the survival and thrival, and honestly, like, I know how that sounds when I say that, but I actually think I harbor a lot of hope. Because, to your point, this sort of stuff is happening apparently, and it's like, why is this sort of stuff happening apparently? When I say apparently apparently for people's experiences, and they're talking about it, to Laurie's point. What? Why? So there's a lot of hope in there. Actually. Touch wood.
Well, and even if the Hadron Collider and breaking up matter into little black holes by mistake, even if that's what caused stuff like this to be apparently happening, because apparently it began when the CERN was opened, and then
Fired
within
up.
a short time, everyone had the Mandela Effect awareness descend upon them, and experiencing it together collectively. And if someone doesn't know about that yet, I'm always surprised. It's like, what you mean you don't know about? It's like, to me, it's like so obviously ever present in reality. All all of the things that you've been doing on your channel, all of the people you've been seeing, all of the information you've been gathering, I don't know how much you retain because you have to be the ever funnel of so much information from people. But I was wondering, curiously wondering, after listening to a few recent interviews, do you sort of funnel all of this information and then end up with your own particular story of what is X or Y? For example, there's a concern, perhaps, that we're heading into a really turbulent time. Well, it's also transformational. It could be a time of, a cataclysm or a seismic event or a major, serious environmental collapse. I mean, just say that these are predictions you're hearing from some of your forecasters. And then you're looking at everybody, you're collating data, like you're an epicenter. Then do you end up sort of sitting with all of this because you talk to so many people and sort of streamlining it for yourself? Like, if I was to ask you, what do you think the most important themes of the next 2 years are for humanity? Would that come from your sort of the settling down of the information and ideas and predictions that you're coming through from your show?
Yeah, it's interesting. I do place a lot of stead in what the teachers are teaching on the podcast because they've been doing this for the better part of many of the teachers have been doing this 4 decades, 5 decades more. Yeah. Um, there is a very deep like we take the time to make sure that who we're getting on the podcast and who we're endorsing, again, double earth, I'm happy to sort of stand behind what they're doing. Do I share all the thoughts that every teacher comes on and shares on the podcast? Absolutely not. That would be weird. That would be weird if I actually had this meta awareness that encompassed everybody else's awareness that came on the podcast, and I was like this overlordic awareness. That would be really weird. So absolutely not. But
It'd be
does
a
it?
little bit like an AI, actually.
But does some of that trace like leave its imprint on me and my awareness? Absolutely. It'd be weird if that didn't as well. And to that point, I mean, yeah, I'm in this role where I'm a conduit for this information, touch wood, right? And I'm just open, having this conversation, seeing where it takes us. And oftentimes, most of what gets shared is quite coherent amongst teachers. And when that coherence happens, my awareness can't help but sort of crystallize things. It's just natural. And I think many of us has this. It's like this teacher is like an astrologer over here. This person like does tarot for a thing, but she just pulled out some cards and she's been doing this and people have been like really weird stuff has happened. Every time she said like, so she said something like COVID was gonna happen like 5 years before it happened, and it happened what? And then you're like, oh, and she's saying this and then someone else is like saying, these times because of like, the mystical traditions that they study, and then you get like this Hopi elder on and they're talking about this and you're like, whoa, and so then even I think I maintain a healthy amount of skepticism in the role that I play. But even
Hmm.
then, yes, to your point, absolutely. You look at it, and does some of this inform sort of your sentiment around what you feel about it? Yeah, but that's also why I think recently astrology came through for me potentially as well. Astrology gives me the opportunity to sort of look and study a chart. Study nakshatras and take a look at the times ahead and kind of go, oh, okay, so it seems like my interpretation of where we're headed through some of this is this, and I'm still very early. I have not put as much into my astrological chops as you have. I'm very inspired by you, which is also why we've had you on the podcast and will continue to do so, touch wood. Dare I say religiously, but anyway, stop. But so when you have many of these teachers come on and they share similar, and you can't help but coalesce around them and go, this does seem interesting. There's this whole thing around the great transition. Some people say, like I said earlier, like 100% we make it through. Some people are like, we don't know just yet. Who's right, who's wrong? But I like to get, again, Metaflow. I like to zoom out and sort of say, okay, at what point is there coherence? And if I zoom out, it's like, okay, but the coherence seems to be there is a great transition. Yeah. Now, some people are like, we need this. Some people say we need that. Some people say there's a lot of light. Some people say, oh, and it's not it's not completely coherent as to whether we make it through. Okay, but everybody is quite clear that this is, to your point earlier, this is a threshold, right? This is some people call it the reckoning. Some people call it, some people have even gone as far as calling it the final judgment. Yeah.
Yeah.
But even just like there's so many beautiful things that pop in. Like when I say the final judgment, for the majority of your audience, I mean, it's your audience, so they're probably already primed for something like this. But when you say the final judgment, it's like, oh my God, all that sort of indoctrination into what was deemed as like the book of Revelations, like the final judgment is like doom and gloom. But then the teachers will come on and be like, no, 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 no. Human beings transcend judging each other.
Ah, the final judgment. That's good.
And you're like, wait, what? And they're like, yeah, 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 yeah. It's really beautiful.
Yeah.
They just put that in as a fear and control system for you to be terrified. But imagine what humanity would look like if we stopped judging each other. The final judgment, the last judgment ever made, and we move on from there and we just embrace each other. How Aquarian.
Yeah.
And then you look at the
Well,
astrology and it's like it feels very Aquarian, doesn't it? Because Aquarian's very live
it,
and let live, and you're like, wow, like this is. And so all these little things start to coalesce. Absolutely. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, and the astrology supports that transition towards. I would say that it's really about humanity reclaiming something that has, like, innocence lost. Really, the whole metaphor of. There was a pope years ago said, in our haste to focus on original sin, this is in the Middle Ages, let us not forget original innocence. And there's sort of a lost innocence, paradise lost, whatever you want to call it, something that we lost, and we're reclaiming or we're refinding that piece of what and who we are. And it does actually nullify polarity. It nullifies othering and separation. It brings us into fields of telepathy and empathy and compassion and love that is unconditional, because we give ourselves that permission. And in astrology, it is literally Pluto, I think, is telling us the truest tale, because, he's out of bounds in the north and south declination all of the time, every, 50, 60 years, north, south, or even longer time periods. And that pattern is coming to an end. It's flatlining, because after he finishes his 2010 years from now-ish, okay, so 2035, he will no longer be on the south declination when he goes out of the bounds of the sun's ecliptic, which has been happening since last year. But that always leads historically to things like the French and American Revolution and the Protestant Reformation, where people are pulling back the power from the powerful, but they're not pulling back their intrinsic power. They're pulling back external power. And that dynamic then leads to the North declination, which then the powerful take back the power from the people who took it from them. It's a bad tug of war in a bad playground, argument, right? Between kids fighting for control and power. And the whole thing is coming to a flat line. The sine wave is no longer Pluto. Is no longer going to go above and below. The Tropic of Cancer and Capricorn is ecliptic. From our perspective on Earth, it's this celestial equator. It's no longer going to do that. And when it does no longer do that, this kind of archetype of the power struggle is gone. Flat lines.
It's also, but does some part of you reflect back on the fact that we are literally recording this the day of the eclipse in Leo, and we're discussing power and how, like, just, of course, this is what's the tip of the spear and is going to be the tip of the reflection at this time as well. Because to your point, Pluto's going to be out of bounds for a hot minute. Yeah, like you said, 10 years, and it's going to settle. And at the moment, the ripe for the picking within that overarching theme is this Leo transition around power, and power is ripe for the picking. And then we're going to start moving through other themes in the subset to that larger shift. But yes, to your point, I mean, power seems to be this whole thing at this point in time. I think 2026 at large has been a real conversation with power. Who's in power? Who owns this strait? And, and it's like, I own this strait, but I own traffic going this way in Strait of Hormuz or whatever. And it's like, how do you own the strait and yet they've got... Anyway, it's like, there's a lot. Yeah, but to your point, I find this fascinating around what, this Pluto going out of bounds and then stabilizing. The engineer in me, well, it looks at, like, I've got some Aquarian elements in my chart as well, touch wood, and I just go, whoa, like the vibrationary, like, effect of things stabilizing. Because with Pluto, I always, in my readings, end up basically just referencing to my clients, like, if you're not aware of Pluto, Just think back to Archimedes' lever. What did Archimedes say? If you give me a lever long enough, I will lift the sun. Yeah. And so Pluto being, of the system that we've got, being the furthest out, it has the most leverage actually on your being, right?
I love
Yeah.
that. I've never thought of it that way.
Touchwood, don't say that. Me giving you something astrologically. Stop it. Touchwood.
I love that the mechanics of the lever.
Yeah,
That's
the
brilliant.
engineer at the end of the day shows up again and again.
That's powerful. Because Pluto is actually quite small, relatively speaking, and has been
Oh,
demoted to a dwarf planet, but it has the lever.
oh my God.
It's
Like,
the distance is the furthest away, the most leverage. That's
yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
Brilliant,
It's
brilliant, brilliant.
significant.
Thank you.
Whenever someone goes through a Pluto transit, as you know from your decades of work in this space, sorry to date you for a moment, but like, yeah, I mean, doesn't Pluto transitions they have an impact. They have an impact, touch wood. And they
Yeah,
move slow, so people don't see them as like this, but it's like that period of my life, like, whoa, incredibly transformative every time it comes around. Yeah.
the cliche, right? Pluto is like that caterpillar butterfly. The transformation is like quantum leapish in a sense that, there's such a stark transformation between one form and the other that we encounter after a long time with Pluto in our sign, and it just continually baffles me that such a small object so far away from the sun does have an actual leverage like that, because it does make people's lives completely transformed. And not just the outside of their lives, but their experience internally of their lives and who they think they are in the game of life or in this simulation of life. So it is one of the most potent transformers of all time. And yeah, it gets the bad rap all of the time, right?
Yeah,
In archetypal astrology too.
my symbol for Pluto is the phoenix. Yeah, every time I read for Pluto, it's very simply like that. If I had to do a quick sort of, it's the phoenix, and I see a very toroidal field in the phoenix burning itself down into ashes and then returning just with a wider wingspan. It's happy to burn it all down, just to come back with a wider wingspan in each and every single time. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
you need that forest fire. It's a cliche, but it burns through the forest. It's naturally occurring. It's something that normally happens. Not today. Now we have some weird over the top fire weather. Obviously, Leo's all hot and bothered, and Saturn's fallen in fiery Aries. So all the world fires we're experiencing are easily seen in the astrological sky. But it's also the idea that that new growth, that fresh new growth that is going to form after something does burn down, and collectively we have to burn down more than the sky says to us. Barbo's basket, the outer planets trining, show us we're not burning down the small stuff. We're not burning down like that's the end of your favorite brand, Coca-Cola, that went bankrupt. Who cares? It's burning down the way we interact with reality from our individual consciousness and the way we recognize at once. Finally, maybe that we are all co-creators here. This is to me the lost innocence part of reality, is to think somehow that we are just wandering around as disconnected, isolated pockets of consciousness, which we're not. The body of Christ, right? We're a part of something larger, the body of humanity. And that we have no at all creative power, that somehow we're just like, this is, not everyone thinks that, of course. But there's also the extreme, like the manifestation stuff that doesn't account for the shadow that a person has, to be in a manifestation mode, in my view, and astrologically, it's the solar energy as well. One needs to be in alignment with one's true self and surrender to something larger than oneself as well. Like Saint Francis, make me an instrument of your peace, make me an instrument.
Yeah, and I find that, as we're talking about some of the, like, for those that are tuning in, it feels like a very Aquarian sort of shift that we're talking about. I mean, Pluto, you were describing earlier, has moved into Aquarius in the Western astrological gamut of things. Yeah, oftentimes when looking at these transits, I refer to the other side of the chart, because I like to say astrology is a map for duality. Yeah, this dual experience that we're living, astrology is the map for it. And so when you're going through these equations, so it's like, okay, what is, and the ode and the impetus that you just referred to there is like, what is your individual creativity at this time? Yeah. Obviously, we're going to be evangelizing Leo when we're going through a Leo eclipse because that's the energetics of the day. But nonetheless, right? Like that, like going through this massive Aquarian shift, it's like, what is the, like, as you're talking about power, it's like, yeah, the power's coming back to the individual. But what are you going to create? Like, what's creatively waiting for you? Talk about authenticity. No two people have the same creativity. No two people have the same spirituality. Yeah. And Aquarius loves to celebrate that fact. Yeah. Loves to celebrate individualism, but in the collective sense of things, like you said, Corpus Christi, like in the body of Christ, all coming together. And yet somehow there's this really, because again, it's a whole new paradigm. So it's hard for us to, but like the more I say for Aquarius, the more I know this sounds, I've got 3 kids under the age of 5. So I know this sounds like a bit of a nursery rhyme, but the more the more we, the more we, the more I. Yeah, E-I-E-I-O, pardon me for
I
but
don't,
but that feels like the energetics of the time. So your creativity, right? Like your creative impulse is so necessary to you to you listening in.
Well,
Yeah.
here's a great metaphor because what you're talking about makes me think all of a sudden of a snowflake. So we know that every snowflake, like our fingerprint, is utterly unique and there's no other snowflake designed just like it. They fall into the ground and then the creative force called kids make a snowman, right? And yet that art, that snow art that's created from kids making a snowman is made by probably thousands or millions, I don't know, of individual flakes that fell into one thing called snow and then were put together to create something. And to me, I think that we always want to separate ourselves out from something bigger than us, purposing us like a special role in the orchestra of life. And I think that's why I like astrology. It kind of, you were very drawn to the purpose version of astrology or coaching people to see their true purpose. And so was I. I had a reading called The Magic You're Born For when I was working more actively with clients that was always the most popular because everybody has this feeling inside, I'm here for a reason. That's how we started. Your father asking you that question. And yet
Hmm.
we're afraid to own that reason because somehow, to be in your life with your purpose and reason activated is ultimately an act of surrender because the thing that you're here to do is already been designed for you. You just have to say, I stop resisting.
Yes. And I don't want to sound like we dismiss the fact that there are a lot of, if I say forces at play, it sounds multidimensional, so I just want to be mindful of that because I don't want to be
Oh,
fear-mongering, but there are so many things designed that are in the way that continuously have interest in keeping us disenfranchised from ourselves.
yes. Trying to basically keep us, our attention and focus away from what matters. So there's an attention war by forces that would rather keep humanity, let's just say asleep to make it simple. We're all
Hmm.
sleeping. Some of us are arousing and kind of half awake and looking around. Other people are wide awake. And the awakening metaphor is sometimes you can say it's spiritual, but it's also just returning home to our sovereign creator status of what we really are. And what would repress that does that through technology, through distraction, through fear, through war, through scarcity, for the endless game of keeping everybody on their toes as if we're always in a perpetual flight and fight response. But I agree
Being
there
on
are
it, being
forces.
spending 8 to 9 hours a day. Back to the beginning of the podcast with Inspired Evolution, like being spending 8 to 9 hours a day, sometimes 10 hours a day, working in a job that isn't in alignment to you, just enough to make ends meet. Being on the hamster wheel, so you don't even have the time and the bandwidth to ask some of the more important questions that you've pointed to, and my father's pointed to, and we've pointed to today. Like, it's distractionary. It's distractionary by its nature. Yeah. And it's yeah, and it's like, oh, everybody else is doing it, so we've got to go do it. It's like everybody else is putting up with this 9 to 5 thing, and again, this is why like many astrologers kind of go, oh, Saturn, watch out, and I'm like, I love Saturn, I love Saturn, I love Saturn, yeah, because it's like a big grandfather. It's like you were here for a reason. Are you doing that? Are you here for the thing
Yeah.
you're here to do? And yes, in his ways, he can be very masculine. And I think the world, kind of has its way with, we don't have as many strong masculine archetypes that of that nature anymore. But he checks in and, he goes, hey, like you were here for a reason, as you said, to the second Saturn opposition. I sort of see these Saturn oppositions like almost like there's a tree. Yeah, and the Saturn return is like when and there's a circle around this tree, right? And so the Saturn return is when you're back around and the soil gets turned up. Yeah, the entire soil gets turned up. And if this is the right tree planted in the right soil, happy days. If not, and this is why some people go, oh, Saturn's return, because that tree no longer works in this soil. You're going to have a whole new tree planted in. I was an engineer, and it's like a whole new tree. I was like, oh, no, this is all I know. This was my one thing that was helping me breathe. It's my tree, and then all of a sudden you've got this whole new thing that checks in. And then Saturn squares, are quite, have their own energy. And I feel like that's when, you work your way around the circle 90 degrees and the tree gets tugged on by the side. Yeah. And it's like, and some roots will come up because they're not the strong roots. Yeah. And when they come up, we feel discomfort. It's like, that's what I've known. Yeah. For me, when I went through a Saturn square, right, it was like, I had my Saturn's return, and it was the podcast dropped in, and a Saturn square came along, and astrology popped in, and it was like, hey, like the whole thing's been about purpose. All we've been talking about today, alignment, belief, create. It's about purpose, health and purpose and health. Saturn comes in and goes, hey, like that coaching thing that you're doing based on values was cute. Yeah, but that root is like, here, you really want that root to grab hold as it's tugging? It's like, here's astrology. And it's like that root gets laid down. It's like, oh, wow, that's way stronger. But in the time, it was like, I don't understand why, like, I have to study like all of these 3 different modalities of astrology all at once. What was wrong with what I was doing? Why is it? Blah, 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 blah. And it's an intense time. And then you've got the opposition to your point where the tree gets pulled, 7 to 9 years later, and the tree gets pulled by its hair to sort of see which roots will hold. And that's a bit more intense than a square now, isn't it? Because you're just pulling on things from 90, you're pulling on things 180 degrees to your point at that, that 40 midlife crisis sort of time, right? Mid-40s, and it's like, whoa, like, ooh, like which roots are actually going to hold? And then you get the last check when it comes back around again on the other side of that tree, and it's like, yeah, you're embedded, you're solid, you're doing the things that you put here to do, and then it comes back for the soil.
Absolutely. I love Saturn. I'm like you. I love Saturn. Saturn, I have a course called the 12 Gates of Saturn, and probably want to write a book about that, because Saturn is literally those are growing pains on those squares, right? And which way to keep and which way not to go. But the Saturnian impulse, he's like the chronicator of time. It's the Lord of time.
Yeah.
And you could say the Lord of karma. Yeah. But everything in our life operates on time, and it's 7-year cycles with Saturn. We have the 7-year itch for marriages, right? But anything in your life that starts at a certain point, you'll notice if you stick with it long enough that it changes every 7 years until you go full circle back to the beginning.
Yeah.
And so Saturn gives us a great clock of our lives, and we can work with that clock. But I love for you that, you're in your Saturn return with your wife, and she's like, well, you're going to create this new business eventually, but you have to be also pragmatic, says Saturn. You need to make enough money for us to have kids.
And so it's like back to engineering you go, right? And so it was like, and there was this whole soupy time that I had to go through, like back to engineering and then running a podcast. And yeah, I mean, it's back to your point, like, about alignment earlier as well. It was a really challenging time to be, working in engineering 60 to 70 hours a week whilst doing this podcast, but effectively on the weekends. My weekends were dedicated to this podcast whilst also, living my life. But I was just an ode to alignment. So my wife, we gave birth. She gave birth, but we had our first son, touch wood. And during that period, like I continued podcasting. I slowed down a lot of things, but I continued podcasting. And she's going to wrap me over the knuckles a little bit over this, because she's going to be like, there's no such thing in our relationship as let each other. We don't have a relationship like that, touch wood. But she continued to let me, in air quotes, podcast, and I was like, how come, I didn't need to slow that aspect down? And she turned around and she goes, hey, like, you are a better functioning human when you're doing these podcasts. Ode to alignment, right? Like ode to alignment. When you're aligned, metaflow, the flow, health, purpose, right? And she doesn't even believe, or she does believe in the same things I believe, but nonetheless, but she's not like teaching this metaflow framework, but she can feel it texturally as an awareness. It's like when he's doing the things he loves, he's way better to be around. That's true for all of us. Yeah, but again, we're disenfranchised from ourselves, and we're like walking around frustrated, bottled up, narky at each other. Yeah, and there's something really deeply to consider. Like, I know this is very pragmatic, but if you want to get super spiritual about it for a sec, I mean, truth. Is there a higher order than truth? And so many of us are disenfranchised from truth. Our politics, everything. There's no truth. And the further we are from truth, the further we are from our own spirit. And you take a look at the world around you, and why does it look like this right now? Well, where's the truth? They're calling it a post-truth era.
Yes. Yes, a post-truth era. I think that was Ken Wilber's term. I kind of find that the whole thing is that it's the game has gotten see-through, unfortunately. Unfortunately, I mean, it's bad for the game meisters who are trying to distract humanity with, the eternal forever conflicts that are manufactured for the wealth and power, and also the non-human consciousnesses that are running the show. The people running the show that we would call the Dark Lords of the Earth are just co-opted. So there is unfortunately more than one species playing on Earth, and it doesn't have to have a body. Okay, I know this from years and years of my own work in spirituality, shamanism with shamans around the world. I trained with. But we don't have to focus on that. Like, we don't have to go, oh, bad dark forces are keeping us distracted, which they are, and there is no truth, because everything is a lie, because Satan is the father of lies. But what I'm really seeing is people are no longer believing the lies. People are becoming extremely aware that this thing is a game and that they're being played. And this is happening to people who are, I would never think. Sometimes you think, oh, it's all the the new agey types who are figuring this out. It's not. I've had some of the most interesting conversations with people, seriously, who are just like the lady who cleans the apartment building, that I live in. I see more people just, I don't know if it's jaded. Okay, that's one way. They're just jaded about the game of the world and its wars and its distractions. But not everybody's going to be jaded and do anything about it. And to be jaded or circumspect or discerning about, this distraction game that's afoot is different than also making a shift. And I feel the shift for people is to spend some more time inward with themselves, in quietude, in prayer, in meditation. You know what I mean? Not even looking to get anything, just to stop.
I would agree. And also time in nature, because nature is actually an incredible time, because we are nature, and it resets us back to the synthetic stuff. Like, I get super pragmatic with you for a sec. Like, as a parent of young kids, like, haranguing them, not even I don't know if that's a word, but that's my word for it. Haranguing them, right, into the car. If it sounds orangutangy, because that's how it is. You're trying to get your ass, like, everybody get in the car, touch wood, and realizing that at certain points, like, there's pushback. It's like, dude, no, I don't want to put my jacket on. It's like, oh, dude, get in the car. Like, what are you doing? Get in the car. We got to go. We're running late. And it dawned on me. It was like, dude, they're on an organic timeline. You're on a synthetic timeline. You're trying to get them somewhere by 9 a.m. They're working to a circadian rhythm. Can you see how much you're, like, I'm not saying abusing them, but that sounds intense. It's way too intense a word. But nonetheless, like, some modicum of that is in there. It's like, you're like, get in the car. And I'm working myself into a knot around it, touch wood. Yeah? And it's like, actually, you're...
Oh my God, I do relate to that.
They're right. Like, they're just, oh, yep, now I'm full. Okay, cool, great. And it's like, now I'm ready to put my jacket on. Okay, great. And I realize if I just slow down to just follow, we'll be 10 minutes late, but we'll get there with so much more grace and ease, And
oh God,
I sound so Taurus rising when I say that, but nonetheless, right? That's, is like, let's modicum our way there. And one of the other things I think that is worth mentioning, because when you say meditation, you say inwards, and I say time in nature, it sounds like disconnect. And then it's like, well, then what's the point of podcasts like this? What's the point of conversations like this? Where do these live? Why are you doing what you're doing? And why don't you just go live every week and just hold a space of silence so that everyone can just be silent? I do want to do a podcast like that one day. I've got this dream. It's like just one podcast, one big long silence. And just like, thank you everybody for listening. See you next week's episode, right? But I wonder how many people would get it, touch wood. But nonetheless, like, then I think there is something to be said for discernment. There is something to be said for discernment. And I hope, the podcast and the conversation, the Inspired Evolution, your, Lunatic Astrology, I think there's an attempt at the very least, just to put it mildly, try and facilitate deeper and deeper levels of discernment to elucidate more clarity, right? And why is discernment important? I mean, I look back to there's so many examples I can reach for. There's hundreds of examples I can reach for on the podcast, and I don't want to say it's a bit of a shame that I'm reaching for this one, but I think this is one that I can reach for that's, readily available. I mean, you look at the work of Rudolf Steiner. Yeah, he went away, like, so prolific and all the, and we'll get into that another day. But, one of the things he took the time to sort of unpack is satanic forces. He said, yeah, look, just slow down. Like, you just labeled him as satanic, and that's part of the satanic forces is just labeling everything that lives underneath there as satanic. I mean, that's awfully convenient, and now you don't know how to work with them. But if we can just unpack that and look at Aramaic forces versus Luciferic forces, you can actually work with it a little bit better. Aramaic forces are busy trying to convince you that there's no such thing as light. Yeah, there's no such thing as light. Yeah, that's an Aramaic thing. Yeah, whereas as opposed to like then stepping into like the Luciferic forces, like, oh, there's plenty of light. Look how bright this light is over here, though. And there's like false light. Right now, all of a sudden, you can start to, and really, he'll go further. He's not just saying, "Oh, just beware." He's like, no, and in your infinite Buddha-like compassionate self, take a moment to recognize that on a spiritual level, like, these forces are playing the roles of fallen angels, so that you can recognize your discernment and your truest nature, and someone else is playing this role for you. Don't forget to thank them on your way through the process.
That's so true. In the big picture, yes,
So
it
true.
all leads to one place. It's a return home, and the home is truth, because it's you can't speak it. There's no word. You have to be a good Rumi poet, right? Beyond right doing and wrongdoing is a field, says Rumi. I will meet you there. And there is that part of even in the duality all leads home, whatever that is, that no place like home. Tap our little feet. I loved our talk today. I want to honor your time with your three kiddos, but I had a question, a couple of questions I wanted to finish with. I love your dad already, by the way. I love your dad already.
That's good.
Totally great father to prod his kid like that. Sometimes I think when I meet people, I often do this at parties because I'm so geeky and slightly autistic. So I try to find some common ground. So I always ask people questions like, "What's your favorite book or movie, and why?" And I'm really curious. In a guy like you, don't tell me it's an engineering handbook. What is your favorite book or movie, either one, and why?
I love movies. So, yeah, whether you look at my Vedic astrology, there's the South Node, South Node in Leo. If you look at my Western astrology, the sun sits in the fifth house. Pardon me. 3 kids just getting over a cold. Interstellar.
Tell me why. Tell me why.
It's spiritual. It's multidimensional. It's engineering. It's very engineering. It talks about the future. And how we get through into a brand new future together. And a father's love for a daughter. There's love impregnated in there. Yeah.
So hope and love as well in the story. Beautiful. And if you could tell me the second last question, that song, "What the world needs now is love, sweet love." Okay, so fill in the blanks. If you had to sing to the world what the world needs now, what would your prescription be?
Wow. You're asking a Virgo for a prescription for the world. This is the pregnated pause is by design.
My dad was a pharmacist. I think about everything in prescriptions.
How interesting. And then you're prescribing the astrological updates for everybody as well. It's really beautiful. Prescription. Oh, there are so many that are tip of tongue. What would be the one though? To deepen one's relationship with oneself, to better know one's relationship with oneself. Yeah, and hopefully that brings you closer to your capital T truth. One of my favorite movies again is Arrivals, and how,
Oh my God, that is my number one.
oh really? There we go.
Hmm.
Yeah, and bringing all those little T truths together to form one big capital T truth. I think that's very like Leo Aquarian in sign of the times we're moving into. And I think the prescription is to find your little T truth as if it was your big T truth, not to sort of bulldoze everybody, recognizing that it is your little T truth, but go earnestly on the journey as if it was your big T truth, and sort of uncover that. And to get there is to deepen one's relationship with oneself. Touch wood.
I love that. That's so beautifully said. That's the Oracle of Delphi, and the prescription is right on the lintel to know thyself. And funny enough, your homework assignment, my dear, is to go dig up the asteroid Pythia, Pythia,
Pythia!
The Oracle of Delphi herself, whose mantra is to know thyself. I bet you any money it's on one of your major planets because you picked that one today.
You give the best homework. Touch wood, can't wait.
Next time we chat, I want to know where you found her, but she's going to be in there somewhere.
I will definitely let you know.
That was always fun to hang out with you. You know, no wonder we get along if your South Node is in Leo, North Node. We have nodal flips if you're looking at Western.
Touch wood.
It was a ton of fun, and I appreciate your time. And I cannot wait to see your kids grow up under your question to them, which is it like, why are you here? Or do you have your own fatherly inquiry with your little ones?
Oh, touch wood. That was just one question. My father asked me so many. And so, yeah, that curiosity, that fundamental curiosity. I mean, in many ways, it's Gemini and it's nature. But yeah, just growing up curious, growing up open, growing up aware, whilst also, maintaining groundedness through it all, I feel inspired to be a father, touch wood. Sort of see,
you're passing on that.
The truth is they teach us so much as well, like, in fact, I think I'm learning more, as I said, synthetic organic, like there's so much that I'm learning from them, and it's trippy, like you learn so much about yourself at every age they're going through. It's like you're reliving that age of when you were that age as well, and you get the whole opportunity to reparent yourself, so, which is a whole body of work unto itself. And it's not lost on me that astrology came through at the time that it did to help me better parent as well, like looking at their charts. One of the things I do is synastry readings, and I find it so helpful. And it's always super buggy, as you would know. It's like, oh my God, like your sun and their north, or like this and this, and there's so many. And I get weirded out when there's no correlations. I'm like, why is there no correlations between these two? Is your birth time right? There's always so much karmic intertwining between families. It's amazing.
There are.
Yeah.
And every parent would benefit actually from like a comprehensive how to understand your child's chart course.
It's
right?
one of my favorite things to do with parents as well, and relationships. And because as a coach, like back when, like I was happy to coach to just about everything under the umbrella of purpose except relationships, and I would still do it because sometimes people, like, some of my C-suite, like they get stuck and they're like, my relationship, I need to unpack that, I need a space, and it's like, this is the space that they've got, and it's like, cool. But it wasn't until astrology, because like with astrology, it's like you've got your chart, you've got their chart, because in coaching we'd be talking, like, I'm talking to you, I'm not talking to them. And then there's the third entity that is the relationship that we're not even, But in astrology, it's like, this is your chart, this is their chart, and this is the third chart. And you're like, yeah. Let's talk relationships now. Now we can talk relationships, right? It's like a real honoring of like all the dynamics that are at play. But yeah, on that, thank you so much for having me, Laurie. My God. And honestly, thank you so much for you. On behalf of, I know you're meant to be thanking me at the end of your book, but I just want to take this moment from like all those people that are listening in. Dude, like, we love your work. We absolutely love your work. And the generosity of spirit with which you continuously show up, my God, it means the world to us. I'm inspired to evolve thanks to people like yourself. So thank you so much for having me here today.
And it's a mutual love fest because I've watched your channel for years before I got to be invited on there, and you were on the top of my wish list because you have this softness and this gentleness, this wicked laugh, but also you are extremely curious and you bring these questions out in people. Honestly, I think about that, the way that you come up with questions when you're just listening for so long. intrepidly good at what you do. So thank you, Amrit, for being here today. It was good to get to know you a bit more, and I'm sure my channel people will be loving to follow into your channel and experience some of your incredible wisdom and fun. You're a lot of fun on your interviews as well.
Touch wood. And if it's okay, I'm sure you'll be back on in a few months as well, and they'll get to
Oh,
see
I'd
you
love
there
to,
as
of
well.
course. All right.
Thank
All
you
right.
again.
Take care. Ciao,
Big
ciao.
love, everyone.
Hello, Astro Curious Soul. This is your overview of Sky Reader, and I want to tell you a bit about the program. I'm going to show you the website that I'm hosting it at, mylaurilothian.com. I want to share a bit about my excitement for this course and why I think it might be right for you. First of all, if you're one of those people who watches all of my videos and then ask me these very intelligent questions in the comments all of the time about why this and why that and how this and how that, then you're probably already ready for this course, because it is your curiosity about how to read the sky. And that is what Sky Reader is for. Astrology is about the map of time. It's so simple. It's like a GPS of time. And once you learn the basic language of your natal chart, then you'll learn some easy to use timing tools that even a beginner can learn with me. You're going to begin to navigate your reality with a better flow, a better ease, a better kind of sense that you know how to move through the world in a way that has your best interest at heart, because you're flowing with the things that are happening anyway. You're moving in the direction that the sky is taking you. So instead of resisting, instead of digging your heels in, or even going in a misdirection temporarily, the universe always course corrects. You can move wholeheartedly with great faith in the universe into the path that the sky is opening for you. Now, life is full of ups and downs, and astrology can't take those away. So even learning to read your sky doesn't mean you learn to avoid any of life's normal storylines. It means that you now have your eye on the ball, you have your heads up of timing your best life. And sometimes timing your best life is nothing more than being able to navigate what you can see coming and respond to it in a more mature, aware, and present way. You know, I had this big calamity happen a while ago, and I could see that I was being grabbed by the sky. And this interpersonal difficulty wasn't just about the other person. It was about the sky playing out in the real world, real-time sky, relative to my personal Aquarius rising natal chart. And because I realized it was just the sky playing out, I was able not to become interacting with the ordeal in a reactive way. So there's a lot of really good ways you can use astrology to do your life better. A lot of my students come back every single year. If you take my class once, you get to take it again and again forever. Plus, you get to keep the content as well and upgrade yourself. And when you come back as a student for the second time, it is 75% off, which is incredibly amazing, given that each time there's new content and new guest teachers, as well as, of course, me teaching you to read your own sky and time your best life. So this is the website, laurilothian.com/sky-reader. If you want to find that way, or just Google laurilothian.com and Sky Reader, and you'll find this page usually showing up in the search engine. Now, throughout the month of August, we have our early bird discount rate of $397. The course is $555, and that is actually a deal for the 7 weeks with me, plus the live calls and the Q&As, plus moderating staff, teaching staff helping me, and a Facebook group and a Discord group this year as well. Now, read your own sky, 7-week foundation. Here you go. I'm not going to redo this. This is a little video of me explaining it to you that's already uploaded to the website. Now, you can do monthly installments in payment plans if you need to, if money is any issue for you. For those of you in really deep need, like, you know what I mean, like needs-based tuition kind of discounts, you'll have to reach out to my team, and you'll see that the information for that will be available here on the website, but it would be hello@inbox.laurilothian.com. But really, the course is already well priced. So here we have me with a funny picture of me. Thanks, team. I love it. I look like I'm very happy, and I'm wearing white. Isn't that sweet? And then one of the things I will show you about, not the whole sales page, is what the program is actually about. So here's some of the outline of the actual material. As you can see, we have what I call the big four. You're going to learn about the most. This is the second class. The first one is your absolutely slow start, super kindergarten hand-holding level to introduce you to the very basic tenets of how to read a sky, what the sky looks like, and what the ingredients of the sky are made out of. So that's your overview course. Some of you may not need that. Some of you may have been well established at astrology already, and for you, this will be extremely boring. But everyone who knows me knows that I think that the foundations in a beginning class, just understanding the language right away, is going to be crucial. You're learning a new language language like, French or Greek or whatever, and you're not going to get it all at once. It's going to take time, just like osmosis, like more exposure to it. So this is our week one, slow start overview. And then we move into the course itself. You can go to the website and click the details, the big four of the 12 houses, planetary dignity, planets and aspects, time lords, helmsmen, and annual perfections. Now, this last part of the course, this is your golden ticket to success. You might think you know about, for example, annual perfections. Well, I've been teaching annual perfections for years, and I've got some insider trading tips there for you about how to use it in a way you may not have heard of before. And it's so easy to use that you could teach your kids and children and, friends and fam to use it once you get the lay of that land. And solar returns, of course, the birthday chart. Everyone loves their birthday chart. It gives you a whole snapshot of everything that happens at a given age. Again, I've taught this class many times, and I've also done this for clients for 7 or 8 years, and you'll be learning a few things you won't find anywhere else about how to read that solar return chart and understand what happens in the year. Everything about this course leads to how to time your life. This is not a course that's teaching you how to navel gaze. I'm not here to show you the quirks of your personality in the simulation called life. I'm not here to help you navigate your past and talk about why it happened. Those are not the courses we're teaching. We're teaching you how to read the sky so you can use the GPS metric of the sky, astrology as a map of time to time your best life. So this is a course that teaches you to become an forecaster or a navigator of reality in a more successful way. So reminding you of that. I get people in this class who want to talk about my Chiron, or my Pluto. And I'm like, nah, no, we don't do that. This is not going to dive into your archetypal, character in the simulation, your wounds and stuff like that. We're learning to teach you how to time your life in this particular class. All right. Now, this is my 7th year teaching, as a lot of you know, so I've gotten to know a lot of the issues that come up, and that was just one of those issues that is routinely showing up. We have 7 core classes. We have 28 actual sessions. We have teaching team Q&A plus me on my own Q&A. So you've got a couple Q&As to choose from per week. We change the time. So everywhere in the world, you'll probably be able to make one. Everything I do has a course replay. Everything I do is loaded into the teaching platform for you to keep forever. If you can't make the live classes, if you can't make any of the Q&As, you can still come and learn from me. However, I'm not reselling this course. I have never resold this course as a self-study. So if you really want to jump in, this would be your chance. These are, and I always say I may not teach it next year. It's always possible with 2 books in my on the shelf to finish, 2 books to finish, 1 astrology, 1 spiritual awakening, and actually 1 fiction book. I would like to get those written in the next year. So just be aware of that. This can be an introduction to my next course next year, Mapmaker, and also Codebreaker. In other words, this would give you the basic understanding to jump into my more intensive and more advanced courses next year. Now, I have guest workshops every year. Last year, I had 4 teachers. Now I have 6. This is just bonus content. This is just extra material for you to enjoy. So we begin on October 1st. Every Thursday, we have guest teachers. And I will see if I can figure out where on my website that my team put that. But just so you know, those guest workshops will teach you some very fundamental, fun things to do in astrology. So here we have it. 6 ways to see where it can lead. Lovely, lovely team headlines here. So one of my colleagues and students, former students, Sinette Caldwell-Barr, is doing the 4 I always can't say this word, Purusharthas, and this is a great tool of understanding where your purpose, your prosperity, your spiritual liberation, and your pleasure and your money stuff lie in your chart. So I think you'll enjoy that. It's easy to learn. It's very powerful, and it really does help you see how to navigate life. Mel is going to be teaching where in the world you might want to live or travel based on astrology and how you can look at your astrocartography chart. And we'll also have Laura Basseni teaching about the Cosmic Wellness Blueprint. She is a health coach, but also a medically trained astrologer, like medical astrology, and you'll learn some basics about finding your own energetic elemental and modality elements for better health and wellness, and also prevention, I suppose. Donnie Lim, my colleague, who's very much an expert on all things Venus. You guys may have seen him on my channel with me doing world astrology. He's really fun to hang with. Is teaching the divine feminine cycles for timing, okay? Divine feminine cycles and timing. And so he'll be taking you down the Venus conversation road for her cycles and how to use that in your life for all ways to move forward, especially with love and pleasure and desire and money. Justin McClure is an electional astrology teacher today for us in our course, and he will teach you how to choose the best time to launch your business, make that phone call, hire that lawyer, whatever, get married, etc. Electional astrology teaches you some of the basic understanding that when you begin something, then you set in motion that thing forever. In other words, it bears like a birth chart stamp. So knowing when to launch something into motion is important. It's funny, a lot of us astrologers on YouTube do this all the time. When we want to do something big and splashy or promote something, we'll look for a very good sky and a very good time of day in that sky to put it out for you guys on YouTube. So you'll also notice all of a sudden every astrologer is emailing you on the same day. A lot of us are using electional times. Tara and Renee will be teaching us the cosmic magic of numerology when you blend it with astrology. I love this combination. I've been doing this for myself for years. So if you want to learn how to illuminate your reality by making these two pieces of the real estate, numerology and astrology, two occult disciplines come together, that's your ticket to fun. All of these courses on Thursday evenings, okay, at 6 p.m. Pacific time, are available for you for replay and self-study, and you get to keep them forever. But if you attend live, of course, you can ask questions for the teacher and be engaged in a live learning process. Now, just alone, these courses would be easily costing a couple $100 for 6 courses. So you can see what a deal Sky Reader really is. We come together every single Saturday at 9:30 a.m. Pacific time, 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Adjust for your time in Europe. Usually you guys are 8 hours difference than we are in Pacific time, but ask Siri, Google, or timeanddate.com, etc. So you know exactly when we're coming together. And here we have a lovely little schedule drawn up of all of the times for everything to happen. You could just take a look at that by going to the website, screenshot it or whatever, but there you are. So we may not repeat this live edition. I always say that. You always never believe me, but there will be a point, 7th year teaching, you get the 7-year itch, which is a Saturn cycle, that I may have to take a break in order to write some of these books that I need to get done or that I want to get done. So go ahead, Facebook group, Discord group. It's not where I'm monitoring your homework, but you do get homework. It's where you got collaboration and support from my moderators, encouragement. You can tag me or my moderators for help, but I'm not there checking your homework like you're being certified by me to become an astrologer, but it is a very useful group. Other students ahead of you or former students will probably be there. People help each other when you're confused, and my moderators will also be astrologers who are also supporting you when you have questions about what you're doing. Nobody in this course is doing the work for you. You do get homework. It's totally optional. It's to practice the methods you're learning as you learn them. All right, so here we have it. We're at the end of it. These are some great people who decided, my students, to give me some wonderful testimonials over the years in the various classes I've taught. You're seeing a lot of my last class group, the Divine Timing Masterclass. Give me some commentary there, but Sky Reader, people come back every year to do it over and over again because it actually is a lot of fun. So I hope some of you will consider joining me, and I am so excited. We have a nice little gathering of 29 countries and 325 students already signed up, and we are well supported to make sure that you have a good time and that you don't get lost as you go along. I do have staff, I have teaching assistants, but it is me in that Zoom room for 2 hours. It usually ends up being 2 hours every single Saturday. And I'm also available in one of the weekly Q&As of the 2 each week. All right. Thanks, guys. Don't forget, this is just an overview. Hopefully it gives you some lay of the land. Go to LoriLothian.com/sky-reader.
Lunatic astrology.